The outer rim colonies had grown used to silence. A silence made of empty starfields, flickering comm buoys, and the faint hum of orbital shields that were older than the settlers themselves. Out here, humanity lived on the very edge of mapped space, where the void breathed cold and slow, and help, if it ever came, was measured in weeks, not hours. No one expected miracles. No one expected rescue. Certainly not on the night the sky tore open above the mining moon of HFY. It began with a vibration in the air, a low tremor rolling across the dust fields like the growl of some ancient beast. Children paused mid-play, tools slipped from tired hands, and the miners looked up with a dread they couldn't explain. Then the first lights appeared. Dozens of shimmering points streaking across the horizon, descending fast, too fast, like burning stars falling toward the ground. Everyone knew what it meant. The Dravik raiders had returned. They fell upon the colony with a precision born of cruelty. Their drop crafts slammed into the soil, their armored troops pouring out in rivers of metallic claws and bitter smoke. The settlers, armed with nothing more than industrial tools and repurposed drilling beams, made their stand on cracked ground still warm from the engines of the invaders. They fought not for victory, but for time to send a single message into the void, a message they knew would vanish into the dark and die unheard. But still they sent it. A desperate cry wrapped in static and fear, climbing upward past the thin atmosphere of HFY, begging for anyone, anything, any force large enough to stand between them and extinction. Then they braced for the end. The Dravik lines tightened, their advance a slow, crushing inevitability. The sky above dimmed under the smoke of burning generators. Families huddled behind ruined storage tanks, listening to the thud of alien footsteps drawing closer, closer, until even the ground beneath them felt like a drum of doom. That was when every sound stopped, every creature, every frightened colonist, every raider froze as the night itself seemed to inhale. A strange pressure rolled through the air. A gravitational ripple so strong it made the dust lift from the soil and dance in weightless spirals. The Dravik turned their glowing eyes upward with a sudden, primal fear. Something was coming, high above the moon, where the faint halo of the gas giant cast pale stripes of light. The void twisted. A single point of darkness sharpened, then stretched wide like a wound in reality. The stars bent around it as if bowing to an unseen king. And from that impossible breach, a shape emerged, enormous, angular, alive with roaring energy, a Terran warship. But not just any warship. This one descended like a wrathful comet, its hull etched with shimmering scars from battles fought in regions no human map had ever dared record. Its engines howled with white-hot fury, casting shadows that stretched for miles. As it broke through the clouds, a shockwave thundered across the battlefield, flattening alien banners and sending Dravik skirmishers stumbling backward in terror. For the colonists, hope arrived not as a whisper, but as a scream. The warship drifted overhead, silent now, scanning the surface, judging friend from foe with divine precision. Dravik warriors raised their weapons toward the sky in what could only be described as trembling defiance. Yet they knew. Every instinct carved into their war-born genetics told them the truth. They were prey standing before a far greater predator, when the ship fired. The night became sun, a beam of focused light, thin as a blade and bright as creation, carved across the ground with impossible grace. No explosion. No debris. Just silence, and then a clean, perfect line where an entire Dravik platoon had been standing moments before. Panic shattered whatever discipline the raiders had left. They scattered into the darkness, scrambling for cover, for ships, for anything that might save them from this human fury descending from above. The colonists watched with tears in their eyes. Awe and disbelief mixing in their chest like fire and ice. Help had come. Against all odds. Against all expectations, a human warship had come howling from the void. And everything began to change. The battlefield smoldered beneath the drifting shadow of the Terran warship, its hull reflecting the firelight of burning Dravik machines. For a long moment, no one on HFY dared to move. The colonists knelt in the dust, breaths trembling in their chests, as if afraid that any sound might shatter this impossible miracle hovering above them. Even the air seemed to hold still, waiting. Then the warship's engines pulsed, slow, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a titan awakening. The ground quivered. The clouds parted. And a second shockwave rolled outward, scattering smoke and dust until the sky cleared enough to reveal the warship's full silhouette. It was massive, deeper and darker than the void it had emerged from, built with a design unlike any fleet the colonists knew. Armored plates overlapped like the scales of a mechanized dragon, glowing veins of blue-white light traced across its length in patterns that pulsed like breath, and then it spoke, not with words. Not yet, but with a deep resonant hum that rippled through the atmosphere and into the bones of every living thing on the moon. A frequency encoded in harmonic signals, Terran identification, battle mode protocol, and a single threatening broadcast aimed directly at the Dravik fleet. The raiders heard it too, their remaining strike crafts, still circling in the upper atmosphere. Spun away in panic as their sensors blared warnings far beyond their understanding. The warship was operating on energy signatures the Dravik had only seen in classified dreadnought archives, power levels that should have been impossible for a single vessel. The settlers watched the sky as the enemy began to retreat, but the humans in orbit had no intention of letting any of them leave. The warship's thrusters flared, burning arcs of white fire that carved streaks through the clouds as it rose higher. A pair of dorsal turrets rotated with chilling calm, tracking the fleeing raiders. And then the ship moved, not with the slow, lumbering weight of a capital vessel, but with impossible grace. Accelerating in a blur that left the atmosphere trembling in its wake, at the edge of the moon's gravity well, the Dravik vessels tried to regroup. Their formation flickered, a chaotic swarm of desperate shapes. They fired everything they had, missiles, kinetic shards, plasma bolts, turning the starfield into a storm of burning trails. The Terran ship didn't dodge, it carved through the barrage like a blade through water. Each projectile that neared its hull bent away at the last moment, dragged off course by a shimmering distortion field that refracted starlight like a prism. The colonists saw it even from the surface, a rainbow shimmer dancing around the vessel as if reality itself refused to allow harm to touch it. And then the warship struck, a single arc weapon flared across its underbelly, unleashing a bolt of concentrated energy that didn't explode, it simply erased. The first Dravik cruiser dissolved into a cloud of incandescent dust before its crew even realized they'd been targeted. The second ship split down the middle, its halves drifting apart in eerie silence before bursting into fire. A third raider tried to jump, but the Terran ship fired again, clipping the vessel mid-transition and scattering its atoms across the void in a vapor of blue light. In less than 30 seconds, the Dravik strike fleet was gone. Back on the moon, survivors watched the battle unfold in stunned silence. Some laughed with wild relief. Others sobbed. A few simply stared upward, their minds struggling to process what they had seen, but there was no time for celebration. A voice crackled across every comm unit, every speaker, every emergency transmitter on Helion 3. Calm, resonant, human, this is the Terran Vanguard warship Astrius. Colonists of Helion 3, your distress call was received. You are safe. A wave of emotion rolled through the settlement. People embraced. Fell to their knees. Lifted their children into the air as if the universe had just handed them back the future, but the message wasn't finished. Dravik activity detected across the outer rim. We are tracking additional fleets. Reinforcements may arrive within hours. The colonists froze again, joy turning to dread. It was not over, not yet. The Terran warship descended once more, aligning itself directly above the largest ridge overlooking the settlement. It deployed a shimmering shield barrier around the colony, a glowing dome that spread across the land like molten glass. The raiders might return, but if they did, they would find Helion 3 ready for them. Inside their homes, the settlers gathered around flickering screens as the warship's projection came online. A hologram formed, tall, armored, unmistakably human. A commander whose presence radiated cold determination. Hold strong, she said. Her eyes burning with fierce resolve. Humanity is here. And we do not abandon our own. Above them, the Astrius turned toward the stars once more, because it knew something the colonists didn't. The Dravik weren't fleeing, they were gathering, and the true battle had yet to begin. The Dravik did not wait long to show their answer. Hours after the last embers of the first strike faded from the sky, the horizon darkened once more, this time with shapes far larger than raider craft. Colossal silhouettes emerged from the void, blotting out starlight as they descended like metallic storms. The ground vibrated beneath the collective roar of engines powerful enough to shatter continents. The colonists climbed rooftops, hillsides, and battlements of the settlement shield, staring upward as a fleet unlike anything they had imagined bled into the sky. Dozens, no, hundreds, of Dravik warships filled the firmament, forming a drifting ceiling of war. Their hulls were plated in cruel black iron, spiked and jagged like floating fortresses ripped from nightmares, each one large enough to level the colony 3 times over. Fear crept into the hearts of the settlers, but above them, the Terran warship Astrius awakened, its lights brightened. Its engines deepened into a steady thunder. Its shield projections doubled in intensity, bathing the settlement below in a protective glow. In its presence, the people found their fear slowly replaced by something else, an ember of courage. Humanity had come for them. Not a token force, not a last-minute escape ship, but a being of iron and fury that stood unshaken before an armada. The Dravik fleet locked its formation. Their targeting arrays aligned on the lone Terran ship. Hundreds of red reticles glowed across the sky. The colonists held their breath, the universe paused, and the Dravik fired, a torrent of destruction. Plasma lances, kinetic spears, superheated beams, poured downward. The sky turned into a boiling storm of light and violence so bright it cast shadows across the ground as if multiple suns had ignited at once. The Astrius didn't flinch, its shield flared, bending the attacks around its hull. Waves of energy rippled through its armor like light across deep water. Each impact echoed like distant thunder, rolling across the moon's surface. For a moment, it looked as though the Terran ship were drowning in a sea of fire. Then the ship answered, its hull separated into segments, revealing banks of hidden weaponry. Panels unfolded. Rings of power rotated into place. Its ventral cannon glowed with the cold light of a forming star. The first Terran volley erupted, a column of energy speared through the void, slicing a Dravik cruiser in half. A moment later, kinetic rods launched faster than any eye could track punched through another ship, reducing it to a blooming cloud of molten fragments. Swarms of guided microsatellites burst from the Astrius, weaving through enemy formations like silver insects, detonating in controlled, precise bursts that tore holes straight through shields and hulls alike. For every moment of destruction, there was a moment of eerie calm, pauses between volleys when only the soft hum of the Terran ship carried across the air. But fear began to spread through the Dravik fleet. They had expected a lone Terran ship to fall under overwhelming numbers. Instead, they found themselves locked in a battle that felt less like combat and more like judgment. Their formation broke. Their captains shouted over one another in panic. Some ships retreated, others charged blindly, firing without aim. The Astrius moved through them with predatory grace. It danced between their lines, bending trajectories, warping light, slipping through their crossfire like a shadow untouched by flame. Each move was deliberate, methodical, an executioner delivering precise blows. On the ground, colonists watched in awe. Their fear dissolved entirely, replaced by an overwhelming realization. They were witnessing something historic. Humanity had evolved into a force the galaxy was not prepared to understand. The night sky burned with the remains of the Dravik fleet, but even as victory took shape, the Astrius detected something deeper, something moving behind the fleet. Just beyond sensor range. A distortion. A mass large enough to eclipse the fleets that had come before. The Dravik had not yet shown their true weapon. The air grew still again, the stars trembled, and the Astrius prepared for whatever horror the Dravik Empire was about to unleash. The distortion grew, warping the horizon like a heat mirage in the void. Space itself stretched, twisted, then tore open with a low, resonant groan that vibrated through bone and metal alike. Even from the ground, Colonists felt the air shudder as if reality were recoiling from something it did not wish to reveal. Then the flagship emerged. It dwarfed every vessel that had come before, a monstrous citadel of metal and malice. Its hull was plated in layers of obsidian armor, each slab etched with glowing crimson veins like a beating heart. Jagged towers rose from its spine, crowned with weapons that pulsed like living organs. The ship's sheer mass eclipsed the stars behind it, casting the moon into unnatural twilight. The Dravik flagship, the Dominion of Cinders, had arrived. Every smaller Dravik ship scrambled to clear space around it. Their formation realigned instinctively, like prey gathering behind a predator. Panic on their channels shifted instantly to reverence and fear. The colonists fell silent. The Astrius halted its motion, drifting into a defensive stance. Its hull panels locked. Its energy fields pulsed. The ship seemed to brace itself as if it, too, felt the crushing presence of this titan. The Dominion scanned the battlefield. Its sensor arrays swept over the burning debris of its once mighty fleet, thousands of lives erased in minutes by a single Terran warship. A soundless moment followed. A moment of judgment, and then the Titan fired, a beam unlike anything seen before, thick, blinding, pure annihilation, erupted from its main cannon. The sky split open. Mountains trembled. The ground cracked. The beam struck the Astrius dead center, wrapping it in a cocoon of blinding white light. Colonists shielded their eyes, metal groaned, shields buckled, the Astrius held. It was pushed backward hundreds of meters, sliding through the upper atmosphere like a meteor reversing course. But it did not fall. Its shields shimmered, bent, shrieked, yet remained intact. For the first time in its existence, however, the Terran warship felt pain. Systems flickered. Internal alarms blared softly through its core. But still, it refused to yield. The Dominion increased power. The beam intensified, growing brighter, hotter, heavier, and the Terran ship answered. Its engines roared to life, pushing against the beam. Its main cannon glowed with an unstable, furious light. Stabilizers failed. Armor plates cracked. But the ship pushed forward anyway, crawling inch by inch toward the impossible. The colonists watched as two titans struggled, one born from cruelty and conquest, the other from defiance and duty. The Astrius finally broke free of the beam and unleashed its counterstrike. A lance of condensed stellar plasma ripped out from its main core, firing straight into the Dominion's forward armor. The impact shook the void. Shields shattered like glass. Armor peeled away in molten strips. The Dominion convulsed, not destroyed, but wounded in a way it had not imagined could be possible. The Dravik Titan reeled backward, its stabilizers flickering. A sound echoed across the valley, carried by vibrating dust and trembling stone. The colonists realized it was their own voices, cheers, roars, shouts of awe. For the first time since the invasion began, hope did not just exist. It burned, but the Astrius knew what the people did not. The Dominion was only getting started. Deep inside the Dravik Titan, a second power core ignited, one that had been dormant for centuries. One the galaxy had hoped would never be used again. The flagship began to transform, and space grew darker still. Here is part 5, without commentary, continuing the same epic, emotional, cinematic HFY tone, flowing directly from part 4 exactly in your preferred style. The Terran fleet did not retreat. Humanity didn't know how to anymore. As the alien armada closed in, millions of glittering shapes eclipsing the stars, every human ship aligned in a single, unbroken formation, stretching across the void like a luminous scar of defiance. Hulls burnt, shields cracked, engines bleeding heat, but every vessel held its line. A hush crossed the bridge of the flagship Resolute. Not silence, just a breath, a heartbeat, the kind of pause in which futures pivot. Then Captain Aaron Caden raised his hand. The command spread like fire. Terran ships ignited their overcharged reactors, blue-white halos blooming behind them, and the fleet launched forward, straight into the jaws of the impossible. Space folded, curled, and tore as human vessels screamed through annihilation-grade weapon fire. Every explosion that ripped apart a Terran frigate only poured more determination into those who remained. Humanity fought not with strategy, not with reason, but with something older, something wired into bone and blood. They fought like a species that had spent its entire history cornered by the universe and learned to survive anyway. The alien behemoths unleashed waves of gravity spears that bent entire battleships in half. Human gunships fired until their barrels liquefied, then fired again. Drones the size of mountains descended like metallic hurricanes, only to be torn apart by coordinated human torpedo walls detonated so close it scorched the armor of friendly ships. The void blazed. The stars vanished behind the storm of light and metal. In the center of that inferno, the colossal enemy command dreadnought, the one whose arrival had shattered entire moons, turned its singular cosmic cannon toward Earth itself. A barrel the length of continents began to glow, drawing power from a dozen siphoned suns. On the Resolute, alarms shrieked, and the crew stared in horror as the reality sank in. One shot. One strike. And everything behind them, every home, every memory, every reason they still fought, would be erased. Aaron Caden didn't hesitate. He ordered a full burn toward the dreadnought. The flagship shuddered, metal groaning as the engines pushed past safe limits and then past sanity. Flames licked through the corridors. Crew members strapped themselves in as the ship trembled violently, every molecule screaming under the acceleration. Human cruisers saw the charge, and followed. 1 became 3, 3 became 50, 50 became a wall of burning steel and human fury racing straight toward the cosmic cannon. The dreadnought reacted instantly. Its escorts deployed. Planet-cracking fire scythed through the void. Human ships detonated around the Resolute like dying suns. But the line never broke. Every fallen vessel opened a path for another to advance. As they neared the dreadnought, Aaron locked the Resolute's main rail batteries on its exposed power spine. The ship was already falling apart, the bridge shaking, panels rupturing, gravity flickering. But the captain stood tall, refusing to look away from the monstrous titan ahead. The alien cannon finished charging. Earth's fate balanced on a single trembling second. Aaron exhaled once, slow, steady. He fired. The Resolute's triple-core railguns roared with a sound no one heard but everyone felt. 3 hyperdense slugs, accelerated beyond the limits of physics, tore into the dreadnought's power spine. The first cracked its armor. The second shattered its internal conduits. The third reached the core. A light burst inside the Titan, small, then expanding, then blooming outward in an expanding shock that devoured its hull from within. The cosmic cannon sputtered, flickered, and imploded in on itself, collapsing like a dying star. The dreadnought died. A colossal wave of molten fragments swept across the battlefield, shredding everything unshielded, flipping entire warships, boiling the void into a storm of metal and plasma. The Resolute took the full brunt, its hull peeled away. The decks tore open. The engines ruptured in a flash that blinded every sensor in the system, and yet, against every law of probability, the core section remained intact, drifting amid the debris like a wounded heart refusing to stop beating. The Terran fleet, battered but unbroken, surged into the gap the dreadnought's fall had created. Human ships pushed deeper into the alien formation, turning confusion into retreat, retreat into collapse. In that moment, the impossible happened. The enemy line began to break. The armada that had swallowed galaxies faltered before a species that should never have mattered. But refused to kneel. The battle was not over, but for the first time in the war, humanity had made the universe afraid. Here is part 6, without commentary, continuing directly in the same epic HFY tone, seamless and cinematic. The collapse of the alien line did not end the battle, it transformed it. What had once been a coordinated galactic superarmy became a fractured storm of titanic warforms, panic thrust drones, and Leviathan carriers drifting off course as their command. Lattice faltered. The sudden absence of the dreadnought, its massive gravitational presence erased, sent gravitational ripples through the battlefield that twisted debris fields into spirals and shattered smaller craft. Humanity didn't hesitate. Terran ships surged into the widening rifts like blades sinking into soft metal. Fighters darted through corridors of drifting alien armor. Gunships harvested broken enemy escorts with ruthless precision. Cruisers aligned in perfect firing angles even as they burned from 100 wounds. The void became an ocean of smoke and color, nebula-like clouds blooming from ruptured reactors and vaporized hulls. Through those clouds, the human fleet carved a path. Aboard the broken core of the Resolute, Captain Aaron Caden regained consciousness. The bridge around him was gone, most of it sucked into vacuum, but a thin, flickering shield bubble held a sliver of survivable air. He dragged himself upright, coughing through blood, and stared through a cracked visor at the battlefield unfolding around him. He watched humanity fight like a species betrayed by fate but refusing its script. A broken smile crossed his bruised face. He activated his emergency comms, patching directly into the fleet-wide line. Static roared, then steadied, his voice carried, low but unshakable. He told them the truth. He wasn't dead, the Resolute was still in the fight, and as long as even a shard of humanity remained, the war was not lost. His message rippled through the Terran fleet like a detonated sun. Morale surged, courage hardened, the rhythm of the battle changed. Human corvettes rammed into alien hulls and detonated, assault frigates dove between the legs of colossal walker ships, entire wings of fighters ignited their final boosters and spiraled up the exteriors of mega-carriers, carving molten scars until the giants bled plasma. One Terran destroyer, burning from bow to stern, aligned itself with the largest remaining alien supercarrier, then fired its engines in a suicidal sprint. The collision ruptured the carrier's entire midsection into a blooming inferno that lit the void like a sunrise. Every sacrifice opened paths for others, every loss ignited fury, not fear. Humanity pressed deeper until they reached the alien command nexus, a vast lattice of interconnected hive ships held together by shimmering energy conduits that pulsed like the arteries of some sleeping god. The nexus was the enemy's brain, its heart, its identity. Without it, the rest would fall like severed limbs. Terran engineers, hacking specialists, reconnaissance units, every fragment of human cunning, converged on the target. While battleships fought outside, a strike team infiltrated the lattice through a breach torn open by the collision shockwaves. They moved across corridors of transparent alloy revealing endless starlight beneath their feet, past rivers of glowing liquid code, toward the core chamber. Inside it pulsed the alien overmind, a structure of crystalline tendrils twisting like frozen lightning around a massive pulsating sphere. As the team advanced, the overmind awakened. The chamber's light intensified, tendrils lifted, a cold tremor swept through the lattice. It spoke without words, its presence pressing against every skull, whispering that humanity was insignificant, temporary, doomed to extinction before it ever mattered. But the Terrans didn't slow. They planted the quantum disruptor at the sphere's base. They activated the charge. The overmind screamed. The sphere cracked. Light poured from it in a flood. The entire nexus shuddered, its outer rings destabilizing, and outside, for the first time in the war, every alien vessel spasmed, their movements turning erratic as the command lattice shattered like fragile glass. The Terran fleet didn't waste the moment. They unleashed everything. Rail slugs punched through super-heavy armor, plasma beams carved rings through entire swarms, missile salvos detonated in synchronized waves that consumed the remaining capital ships. The alien armada, once infinite, once perfect, collapsed into chaos and fire. In the dim glow of the burning nexus, the Resolute's drifting core caught the light like a wounded titan refusing to fall. Aaron Caden watched the dawn rise in the void, the dawn humanity created. With its own defiance, the war was not finished, but the impossible had happened. The greatest armada in galactic history had broken against the will of humankind, and the universe would never forget the moment a fragile species stood before a cosmic empire and refused to die.